Hello everyone, and welcome to MSUFCU's Financial Education Seminar Series. We appreciate you all for joining us today. These presentations were really created with you in mind, with the intention to give you financial education on a number of relatable topics to help expand your knowledge of finances. Each event will be hosted by a member of our financial education department or one of our community partners connecting you with resources in our community. We have a number of diverse presentations planned for you this year, and you can explore and register for them by visiting us at msufcu.org/events, which is probably where you found this event at. Today's event is being recorded, and to rewatch or share the presentation, you can go to youtube.com/MSUFCU. You'll then scroll over to playlists and find that MSUFCU Seminar Series playlist option. We will have time after the presentation to address questions submitted to the Q&A. We will also provide additional information and resources in the chat, but please reserve the Q&A panel for your questions. So I am Devontae Montgomery. I am a senior financial educator, and I will be your facilitator this afternoon. And if you have any concerns or technology issues, I invite you to reach out to me in the chat that I will be keeping a monitor on, so that we can ensure that you all can hear everything. All right, so today we'll be talking about building your best budget. So really, when we think about budget, I always think about it as having like a intentional spending plan. And that's really how budget should kind of be viewed, is just really knowing where our money is going and tracking that and ensuring that where it's going is going to be beneficial for us. All right, so our agenda for this afternoon, we'll talk about identifying habits. We'll also talk through reframing, budgeting techniques, paying off debt, as well as some different takeaways. So remember, if you do have any comments or anything like that, feel free to put them in the chat. But if you do have those questions, put those in that Q&A portion. That way we can talk about those after we get through the presentation. So, did you know that 28% of Americans have $1,000 or less in a savings account? And that as of 2025, Americans collectively have $1.18 trillion in credit card debt. So, we put stats and things like that within our presentations, not to make people feel, kind of down on themselves, if that may be the place that they're at, but really to bring to light that the struggles or the things that we go through or the need to build a budget is not just one single person. It is a collective of individuals that really could utilize that type of information. Then when you think about $1.18 trillion in credit card debt, we know that credit card debt also comes with interest. So that means that number is constantly growing each and every month with that interest that's being piled on. All right, so when we are first starting out in budgeting, or even if you're already budgeting, but you want to figure out something that's going to be a little better for you, it's important to consider where we're at within our process. So when we think about that, think about what's your relationship with money. When you think about your experiences around money, where you got your understanding about how you spend money. Understand what is our relationship with money. How do we view it? Some people view money as an opportunity for freedom, the opportunity to control their own time. Some people view money as just a way to be able to get through life, because we have to be able to pay our bills and things like that. Some people view it as an opportunity for building. There are lots of relationships with money, lots of perspective on how we view those things, but it's important to think about, what is my relationship with money? And then, are you currently budgeting? So do you have a way that you are already kind of figuring those things out, where you're already tracking and seeing how much money you have left? What do those bills look like? Sometimes it's not that we're like super peculiar about our budget. It may be the simplified way of having a budget. Maybe you're just kind of tracking your bills, tracking what it is that you have coming in. But do you have any kind of way that you're keeping track of those things? So are you currently budgeting? And then who else is involved with your finances? This is an extremely important question and thought to have. If we have children, if we have parents, family members that are involved with our finances, it's important to consider that because if you are giving money to them or if they are part of your collective, um, then what that means is that that's money that's not there or that's money that's going out for a particular reason, right? So we have to consider that. Sometimes children can be one of the biggest parts of our budget, oftentimes, if individuals have children that they are caring for. And then what are your long term goals? So, really thinking through what are the goals that I have for myself, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years down the line that I want to have? What are those financial goals look like? What do I want my savings account to be at? What are some of the things that I would like to own by that particular point? Am I gearing up for retirement? All of these different questions because our current habits, we have to think through, are our current habits conducive to our goals? So, what I mean by that is if I hope to have a certain amount of money, let's say saved at the end of the year, but I find myself constantly making those purchases that weren't planned, then is that habit lining up with the goals that I've set forth for myself? So that's why we kind of go through these different questions of what is my relationship with money, understanding my relationship can allow me to gain control over how I deal with it. Am I currently budgeting? Understanding who is involved with my finances. All of those things really lead up to, are my current habits conducive to your goals? I heard this thing from someone that said that your $1 million, net worth, your $1 million is built $10 at a time. And I think that's hard to kind of think about because it's just $10. But the reality is that generally, unless we win the lottery, we don't just get a huge sum of money in our accounts. So your goals and where you want to go is going to be built by day habits and decisions. So do think about that. All right. And now we are going to go through um, we're going to go through some different money identities. As we go through these identities, if you identify with any of them, definitely do let me know in the chat. And the thing about these identities is that we don't just have to identify with one. Generally, you know, our style with money or the way that we deal with our money identity, we're going to have more than one because that relationship is not always going to look the same. So first we have a planner. This is a person whose expenses and purchases are intentional. So with the planner, this is a person who says, hey, I have to make sure that I'm thinking about those purchases, that I have them planned out. Maybe I'm thinking a few months in advance of some different expenses that I may have, whatever it is that you may come up with as far as being a planner. Maybe this person already has some sort of budget set forth. But with any of these identities, there are pros and cons to anything. So one of the cons to a planner could be there could be a good opportunity that comes up that doesn't allow you to be able to figure out whether or not I'm going to make this purchase and all of these different things. And then if we don't take that opportunity, then it could pass us by. And although maybe that may not happen often, but it is still something to think about. Or maybe there is a good deal. I'm this way. I am a planner. I try not to be too like lackadaisical with my spending and whatnot. And sometimes a good deal will come up, and because I wasn't planning on purchasing it, I'll let it pass me by. And then a couple of months down the road, I'm like, oh, I did need that, and now I got to pay full price for it. Just some things to kind of think about. And then the next is a person that is a protector. So this is a person who only spends money when absolutely necessary. Sometimes categorized as that word that I dislike, like cheap, frugal. Those types of words are also used to describe a protector, but really just being serious about when it is that I spend money. I'm only spending when absolutely necessary. Again, it can be kind of the same con as a planner, but when it comes to a protector, depending on how protective they are about their money, um, then it could become a little much when it comes to protecting. Like, you know, close the door, don't turn on the lights. I have an aunt, she has her air off during the summer. She's like, I'm not spending all of that money. Finally, she cut it on this summer, but that type of thing kind of makes her uncomfortable sometimes. And I'm like, hey, auntie, it's okay if you just plan for it. I get being protective over your money, but if you just plan for that increased expense, then it won't feel as bad. So next is a person who's a giver, helps others financially. Maybe you're that rock that people tend to lean on financially, constantly helping others out, maybe even putting them before some of your own goals, which is a con to this particular identity because just looking at people and saying, this is just going to be for um, this, I'm going to give this to this person, but I'm not thinking through what are the opportunity costs to giving it to that person. Maybe if I put that money up, it could grow, those types of things. Or am I giving so much that I put myself at a financial disadvantage, which can often happen. I am the youngest of 12, and sometimes I have ATM rolled up here on my forehead. So giver is definitely at the top of my money identity. Um, then we have merger. So finances are combined with others, whether that's a significant other, family member, whatever it is that it may be, having your expenses or your finances commingled with someone else. And then we have a separatist. So when it comes to a separatist, this is a person whose money is separated between accounts. Maybe you bank with more than a few financial institutions. You have your money in different places. It could be for a multitude of reasons. Um, for me, I like to have reasons for my money to be places. So I like to label my money. So I'm a person that opens up those sub savers, little savings accounts that you can open and name them stuff. It kind of helps me to give intention to my money, and that could be done right in your computer line as well. And then we have impulse. This is a person who believes money is made to be spent, right? So they're not a planner. They're not thinking through those different expenses. They're like, hey, I made it, I got it, I'm going to spend it, right? And I think we can all kind of come up with some cons to being an impulsive person, especially as it relates to finances, because there's not that thought about what's in the future. What am I going to need this for? um, or is this going to be the best purchase for me? Um, Individuals that probably do lots of impulse purchasing probably also have lots of buyer remorse that comes into play as well. But these are just 6 money identities that people may identify with. If you do identify with them, definitely let me know in the chat. All right. And then some reasons that people come up with of why not to budget. I feel overwhelmed. I don't know how to budget or where to start. No problem gets solved without starting to solve it, right? So we got to start somewhere. Um, don't want to limit your spending. I don't want to make money to not enjoy myself. That's definitely one that comes into play. But if we don't limit our spending now, then we'll have to limit it at some point, and it'll be more forcefully, depending on where we're at. And then close, but not yet. So I made good money. So after my next raise, I will be able to start saving. That's a one that occurs often as well, just because there's this thought process of I'm going to start doing it, but it's like when this next opportunity comes or when this next raise comes. But if you start it right now, then when that next raise comes, it allows you the chance to adjust that raise to best fit what you need it to fit, where you need that money to go. Don't make enough money. If you make any money, you make enough money to budget. Because remember, I told you it's about that intentional spending. Too much debt, I don't have anything left after paying everything and don't want to see my debt, or that I don't need to save more. So, and I don't think there's a such thing. If we feel like our savings is too full, then maybe we're going to look into investing in things like that. All right. And then now we have some money cycles. So these different money cycles is really like when I get my money, how is it that I'm spending it? So the first one is earn, spend, borrow, spend. So that says that when I'm earning my money, I am then spending it all. And then after I've run out of it, I'm going to borrow and then spend some more. Okay. So borrow could be I've ran out of money, so now I need to switch over to my credit cards, or I've run out of money and now I need to call and ask someone, can they help me out? Second one, excuse me, sorry about that. The second one is earn, spend, earn, spend. So it takes borrowing out of the equation. So when I'm all out of money, I don't borrow, but I just wait until I earn some more and I spend that. So in those top two, what's missing is saving. And saving is optimal when we think about trying to put ourselves in a different position. Though not always the ability to save up a bunch of money, really saving is all about that habit forming behavior of putting something aside for the future. So the third one is earn, spend, save. This one is probably the one that most of us learned if we were taught anything about paying bills or anything like that. The earn your money, spend it on your bills, paying those and whatnot, and then saving off of the leftovers. This is not a bad place to be, but it doesn't put your savings in the most optimal position. Because think about this. Let's say I got paid, right? And I went to go and pay my bills. Let's say my bills took up 65 to 70% of my check. So after that happens, I'm now thinking, oh no, I don't have any money left to save because I got to save this 30% to tide me over until I get to the next payday. But if I look at that last money cycle and I earn, save, and then spend, it doesn't have to be a huge amount of money, but an amount of money that I'm going to agree with myself and my future self that I am going to put aside for them. So that amount of money that I put aside, then I would just save it and then pay my bills. And what this does is ensure that something goes into saving. It doesn't have to be the only thing that you save, but it's that promise to yourself that you're going to put that aside. So earn, save, spend. All right. So budgeting isn't about telling yourself what you can't have, it's about telling yourself what you can have. When it comes to finding your why, whenever we're doing something, especially something that takes a level of discipline like budgeting, um, it's important to know, why am I doing this? What is the reason, or what's going to be the positive impact to participating in this budgeting? So it could be to save up for emergencies, to have money to pay off your debt, or creating a more clear path for yourself as far as navigating debt, home ownership, children, travel, retirement. These are all really, really good reasons that people may opt to do budgeting now, and really just bringing that why as that understanding and that navigation piece as we do navigate budgeting. So throughout the presentation, I know we've seen that last saying. You'll see some quotes on here that really provide an opportunity of perspective thinking. So this one says, budgeting is not just for people who do not have enough money, but it is for everyone who wants to ensure that their money is enough. So that one is really important as well when it comes to how we view money. I always like to say that, like, money is not an autonomous driving vehicle. We always have to kind of remain in control. And we want to remain in control by making sure we're being aware of where our money is going so that we can ensure that it's going to be enough for us. So as we start to think about building our budget, these are kind of the basic concepts or the basic kind of foundation of a budget. First, we're going to write down our income. Our income should be something that we get on a consistent basis, and we can kind of guess the roundabout amount that that income is going to be, because we're really building that foundation, and our budget is only as strong as the foundation that we'll be able to build. So when it comes to that income when we're writing that down. So, of course, something that we get on a consistent basis. Also, being able to know kind of the date that you're going to be able to get that income. If you have income that fluctuates decently, maybe taking the median amount or maybe even the minimum amount that you know that you're going to see and using that as the basis for your income. Including things like overtime is not generally recommended just because overtime doesn't tend to be as consistent. But if you've got a job that's telling you, hey, you're going to be on 12s for the next 2 months, then maybe you can try and consider some of that because you know kind of where you're going to be. But just as a general kind of thing, we don't recommend including your overtime just because it happens so sporadically sometimes. Then we're going to write down our expenses. We're going to separate these expenses into two categories for right now. Then you can separate them as much as you would like to. But we have our fixed expenses and our variable expenses. Our fixed expenses are going to be those things that don't change much month to month and generally are those really important expenses. So when we think about things like rent or mortgage, that's going to be a fixed expense because it's not going to change month to month. It might change year to year, you know, just depending on how that those prices and things like that fluctuate. But ultimately, it's going to stay as a fixed expense. Our phone bill, maybe our internet bill, those types of things, again, are those fixed expenses. Um, Insurance, like our car insurance or our homeowner's insurance, if it's not included in our house payment. Then we're going to write down our variable expenses. When we think about variable expenses, these expenses exist kind of optionally, and we really have the control to make them fluctuate in amount. So when we think about things like grocery shopping, right? So we get it. I get it. You know, there may be that minimum amount that you kind of spend on grocery shopping, but ultimately, grocery shopping is a lot of different factors. It's where we're going shopping at. Are we using coupons? You know, what is the price of the things that are there? Are we buying in bulk? All of those different things. So for my household, there are 5 of us. So a lot of the things we buy in bulk. So 1 month it may be a little more expensive, but that I purchased in bulk, maybe it's going to last us a month and a half or a couple of months. But accounting for that as well. Other variable expenses are maybe even gas, because where are you filling up at? How much is it costing? All of those different things. Um, and then one that is sometimes debated between is subscriptions. Because when we think about the definition or the understanding of a subscription, it definitely is something that's not going to change month to month, right? But they also exist as an option. We do not need subscriptions necessarily. They are an option for us to have, you know, that brings some level of convenience to our lives or whatever it is, the reason that we may have the subscription. Now, I'm not going to say that all of them are optional. You know, if someone pays for some sort of delivery service that delivers their medical supplies and they really need that, understandable. But most subscriptions exist as mere options. So I like to put them in my variable expenses because when we go back and we're looking at what it is that we can lower the cost of, variable expenses are going to be that first section that we look at. All right. So after I've written down my income, my fixed expenses, my variable expenses, I'm going to take my expenses and minus them from my income, and that's going to give me my budget number. That budget number will end up in one of 3 places. Sorry about that. But before I do that, we want to think about adding up the variables. So we can try these different methods as we're thinking about how is it that I want to budget. You know, we have it where maybe you're a person that likes to write in your journal, you know, and within that journal, you're writing, you know, your expenses, you're writing your income, kind of surprises that or anticipated expenses that may be coming up because of a surprise you didn't know it. Or you could try the envelope method. This one is a tried and true method where individuals have those different expenses, they label them, they put the money in there that's budgeted for that particular expense. And once all of that money is gone, then the money for that particular expense is gone. And we have to wait until we can replenish it again. This is a way to stay disciplined. And also, if we are people that use cash quite a bit, or you can use different online methods. So, whether that's using a mobile app or a spreadsheet, those types of things you can utilize as well. So, when we do that math, that's going to land us in one of three places when we do the math of taking our expenses from our income. First place is going to be is negative. So if we are in the negative, what that signals to me is that I'm going to need to make some necessary change relatively quickly. Um, because that means that I'm spending more than I'm actually making. With spending more than I'm actually making, if I am using debt to cover that amount that I am short, then what that's going to start to create is this cycle of debt. And this cycle of debt looks like debt just compiling on top of you month by month from those shortages that you do have. Um, if I start that cycle of debt, it kind of can, dig a hole that becomes increasingly difficult to kind of get out of as well. So there's going to need to be some change to either the amount of money that I'm spending and or the way that I am earning my income. I watched a documentary on Netflix that said that there's only so much suppression that we can do to our income. I mean, not our income, to our expenses. So, only so much lowering that we can do to our expenses. But there's no cap to the amount of money that you could possibly make. And I know that may not always seem like the truth or depending on different variables like how you receive your income. I know, for instance, my mother is disabled, so she can't make a certain amount of money, but she could still work to supplement her income. So if that is an option, then people can look into different ways that they can supplement their income. We have the internet in front of us, so there are lots and lots of ways out there. Um, and then we have breaking even. So that's somewhere at that $0. So your expenses and your income are pretty much matching up. And this can be considered kind of living paycheck to paycheck. Also means that I am not creating any sort of buffer for myself should surprises or emergencies arise. Third place is positive. So that means I'm making more money than what I'm actually spending. All right. And then when we think about what changes can we make as we look at our expenses, as we look at our income, and we start to see maybe there are some things, some changes that I can make, and we start to analyze it. Um, what are some of those changes I can make? So I challenge you all, if you have the opportunity right now, to think to yourself, what is something that I can spend less money on? And then, if you can, put that in the chat for me. I also inserted some information in the chat about exploring more of our financial education seminar series by visiting us, and also access to being able to rewatch those things. Right. So I know for me, something that I could um, spend less money on is going out to eat. Um, I like to tell people that I too like to eat my money. And that's just my way of saying that I do like to eat food that I don't have to prepare. Even though I think I'm a decent cook, I don't always want to stand over the stove. So Sometimes I can get a little bit much on the going out to eat, but I have a budget for that and I try not to exceed it. Um, Especially like when right now, because I'm like on a journey of being able to save a certain amount of money. But definitely think about some of those things, some changes you can make. And then when it comes to some money management tips, we want to be specific. The more detailed you are, the more successful you will find yourself being. That's why I asked that question in that last slide. What are those things that we like to spend money on? Or what are some things that we could hopefully spend less money on? So by being specific and creating as many categories of those expenses as you're going to need, you'll be able to really keep a better watch on how your money is being spent. Be realistic. Don't underestimate your spending. That's an important one. And it's one that often happens, So maybe even try taking a month and tracking your expenses for that for your budget so that you can start to build it. And then be flexible. Understand that spending plans and expenses can change over time. I like to say that your budget is a living document. And with that, it's going to need changes. It is not going to always stay the same. We're in Michigan, we experience all 4 seasons. So there may be fluctuation in your expenses as you think about navigating utilities and things like that, or even gas. Our cars don't run as hard as they do in the winter versus the summer. So they you tend to get better gas mileage in the summer than when you do in the winter, which means you're going to be using more gas, right? And then be consistent by reviewing your spending plan every month or payday. So we should not just be looking at it just when we make that budget, but every time we get paid, we should be taking a look at it to make sure that your money is going where you mean for it to go. And then setting future you up for success looks like paying yourself first. So we talked about in those money cycles of the idea of earn, save, spend. So this is really what that is relating to. Paying yourself first. I like to think of it as me paying my future self in hopes that future me doesn't have to kind of work as hard as I do right now. Um, I would love for work to be an optional thing. I would still continue to come because I love the work that I do, but I would still love for it to be an option instead of kind of a requirement to be able to pay all of my things. Um, so, as far as paying yourself first, we want to commit with automatic transfers. Um, you can, kind of set up automatic transfers where when you get paid, there's a certain amount of money that goes over to your savings account. Um, you can even direct deposit to your savings. So that way you're only switching over the money that you're going to need for expenses and whatnot. Cutting back on spending will enable us to save more money. Shopping smart, making sure that you do some comparison shopping. Just because it can get to you in 2 days does not mean that it's going to be the best price for you. So make sure that you're looking out there to ensure that what it is that you're purchasing, especially those big ticket items, is going to be the best price. And then sometimes, even if you find better prices, if those different stores and whatnot does price matching, then maybe you can take that to them so that you can get that price matched. Save unexpected money. So when you get something unexpected, sometimes I know it can feel like, oh, yes, this is great. I am now going to go out to eat or something like that. Maybe that's just me. But saving unexpected money, you'll start to, when you get that, or if you get it, you'll be really excited for yourself. Like, wow, check me out. I was able to just go ahead and put that aside. And then make your savings a bill. This has been the most beneficial part of saving for me is to make my savings a bill because growing up, I was always taught you pay your bills first. So in order to rectify this in my mind, I just made my savings a bill. And what that means is every time I get paid, my savings get paid. And it's like an automatic thing for me because that's how we want saving to be. We want it to be a habit forming behavior that if you don't do it, you're like, whoa, what's going on? So we got some challenges on here. We have the 52-week challenge, which says to save the dollar amount corresponding for every week of the year. So week one, $1, week two, $2, so forth and so on. After a full year of saving, you will have saved $1,378. So this particular challenge really gives us a framework to work between, and it may not be too difficult for us to be able to complete it. But if you are a gift person like I am, then as we get close to the holidays, I try and put a little more money aside. So I typically have a little less money to be able to maybe put towards my saving. So what I did for this challenge, first time I tried it, week one, blah blah blah. I think I was in my sophomore or junior year at Oakland University, and I was like, this isn't working for me. Once I got to the $40 and we were towards the end of the year, like I'm not gonna be able to finish this. So the next year I just flipped the challenge around and I started around tax time. So I was able to put that money away, because I found that I had a decent amount of money during that time. So week one was $52 versus it being $1. So I say all that to say that you can customize this to fit what you need. You do not have to just take this challenge and just try and complete it as is if that's not what goes along with your spending style. This is why it's important to also recognize our relationship with money as well. And then we have some other challenges. We have the latte challenge, which says to skip the morning stop and make your coffee at home. So $5 per cup of coffee 4 times per year, over 52 weeks will equal $1,040. Okay, so this is, a way that we can be able to skip that morning stop, being able to save that, make that coffee at home. But let's say that the coffee is really something that helps you to get through your day. So I always want people to recognize this, that budgeting is not about punishing yourself. It is about finding creative ways to ensure that maybe you can get some of the things that you want, maybe not all of the things, but also making that savings or future you a thought as well. So for this one, we also have this thing called habit stacking. And what habit stacking says is to stack one habit on top of another, well, the new habit on top of the old habit. So let's say you have a habit of stopping at the store in the morning and grabbing you something to eat, a snack or whatever it may be. Tim Hortons, Dunkin' Donuts. If you do any of those things, then maybe that habit that I have, I'm going to put my new habit of saving on top of it. So if I go to Dunkin' Donuts, and I say this because I just had their $5 special, and I get their $5 special for breakfast. Well, I'm then going to take that 530 again and put it into savings. So this is stacking those habits on top of each other, and it doesn't have to be something that you do that's super expensive, but this is going to do two things. One, it is going to limit your trips to the store or that place because you are spending double instead of just that single price. But also, it's going to bring some consistency to how your savings is growing because you are saving that amount of money. So, just another challenge to kind of think about. And then we have the change challenge. I actually completed this past year. Save a nickel today and increase each day by a nickel. So day one, 5 cent, day two, 10 cent, day three, saving 15 cent. Day 365 would be a single day savings of $18.25. But after we have finished saving, will have saved over $3,000 in that savings account. This doesn't even count for any of the interest that we would get. So we take these challenges and we put them in our savings builder. That's definitely going to get us a little bit more money than what it is that we see on here. All right. And then when it comes to paying off debt, these are two tried and true methods that individuals sometimes participate in. And we have our snowball and avalanche method. Both of them say to make the minimum payment to all debts except for one. But the one that you choose will be the determination of which method you go with. So if I am a person that likes to see those wins happen a little sooner, then maybe I'm going to go with the snowball method, because what the snowball method says is to choose the debt that is the smallest that you have. Okay. So we have um, chosen the debt, the smallest one, and each month you're going to pay extra towards the debt with the smallest balance. Okay, so we're making minimum payments to those other debts. We're paying the extra that we have that we were already putting on debt to that smallest balance. And then after that amount has been paid off, you'll take the amount that was being paid to that one, plus that minimum payment that was being made to that next smallest debt. And then you'll start to pay that. And what will happen is that accounts will get resolved or get paid off, maybe sooner than previously because you have that more pointed way of paying off that debt. And then if I am a person that's really concerned with paying the least amount of interest, then maybe I am going to choose the avalanche method because that says to choose the debt with the highest interest rate because dollar for dollar, that particular debt is costing you the most. So each month, you're going to pay extra towards that debt with the highest rate. After that debt has been paid off, then you're going to take that amount plus that minimum payment that you were making to that next highest interest rate debt and start to pay towards that one. So, some key takeaways from this is that we want to ensure that we list out all of our debts and then identify the best approach for you that's going to be the best for you. And then making those minimum payments on all but the one debt that we selected. All right, some other things to keep in mind is that time is money. So, the more time that we spend on things, when we think about it, that costs us money. But also, it's important to put our time into the things that's going to net us the best. And budgeting is one of those things that can help us out. Involve others. So, I know sometimes if you have children and whatnot, or if you have a family unit, it can feel scary to involve them in your financial business and things like that. But if we're honest, if it's kids with appropriate language, but if it's an adult, just being honest and just letting them know, hey, this is what's going on. And then maybe they could be having the same struggles and you all just haven't communicated with one another so that you can get on the same footing. It's never too late to start. Saving is a habit and know that it's okay to also ask for help. Um, so also, one of the things that I had put in the chat is that don't want you all to forget to join us for some of our upcoming seminar series. So our next webinars include growing your savings with MSUFCU, which will happen on Tuesday, July the 22nd, and then also understanding your credit report, and that will happen on Tuesday, July the 29th. So we do hope to see you all there. So our Funtivity Zone, what this is our library of videos that we have for children. So you could scan that QR code and then it'll take you to our Funtivity Zone, or you can also just search Funtivity Zone MSUFCU on Google and then it'll pop up and you'll be able to follow those links there. Or you can go to our main website, search Funtivity Zone, and that'll pop up there as well. Alrighty, so let me go ahead and stop recording and I will get into our Q&A session.